Microsoft's lead of communications has made some tweets that allude to the idea that they should have the ability to purchase Activision Blizzard because Sony did so well in their Q3 earnings report. Let's talk about my reaction to that, because honestly, I don't think that's a very strong argument. And as a matter of fact, because Microsoft did so poorly, maybe it's a better argument against the acquisition than Frank thinks. Let's dive into what Frank said and sort of my thoughts on it right now. So if you haven't heard yet, Sony released their earnings and Sony did quite well. And the response to that from Microsoft was Sony, the main complaint in the Activision Blizzard deal, announced their financial results. This makes it clear why there needs to be more competition in a market they mainly control. And it was a quote tweet of Tom Warren that said, Sony Q3 earnings are out, 7.1 million PS5 shipments over holiday quarter, up a massive 82% year over year, 46.4 million PlayStation Plus subscribers, down 4%, 112 million monthly active PlayStation Network users, PlayStation software units down 7%, but revenue up, and 1p up. What's 1p? Whatever. Everything is up. That is a good thing, right? Now, if you compare that to how Microsoft did not do as well in their last earnings report. And if we go over to Nib95, who summarized it quite well, comparing latest quarterly results from Microsoft, Xbox, and Sony PlayStation is interesting. Xbox needs those big titles. Xbox Q2, hardware, 13% down. Content and services, 12% down. Total gaming revenue, 13% down. PlayStation, 46% up hardware, 19% up network and services, and total gaming revenue up 53%. Sony has done quite well. Now, the reason I take issue with what Frank has said is because Microsoft has more money on hand than Sony. So Sony is trouncing everybody with less money at their disposal. They're doing well in terms of profit. They're doing well in terms of revenue. And I'm not defending them, but I don't think that Microsoft doing poorly with $1 trillion is a good argument to say, well, we should be able to buy Activision. If anything, I believe it or not, I kind of agree with the people that are saying, maybe that's a better argument against your case than you think it is. So I think it's a little weird that Frank would make that argument. I still think Microsoft should be allowed to buy Activision Blizzard. I look forward to playing all the Call of Duty games on Game Pass. I still think the deal is going to go through, but I just thought it was a very strange tweet. Now, Derek Strickland also chimed in. Let me try and find the tweet there for just a second. Let's wait for Nintendo and Activision figures first, then we can do a full year 2022 analysis of earnings. Sony undoubtedly has a fantastic Q3 and beat Xbox earnings by over $4 billion. The results were driven strongly by aggressive investment in console production and shipments. I've made plenty of videos about where console shortages were and how Microsoft had supply readily available. And Sony obviously wanted to make sure that everybody who could buy a PS5 could. And as a matter of fact, check this out. Over on Video Games Chronicle, PS5 enjoyed its best sales quarter yet, reaching 32 million shipped. Christmas console sales were up by 83% year on year because availability was more available, boosted by broad availability in stores. Now, some of the facts in here I wanted to dive into. On Thursday, Sony's Game and Network Services division reported Q2 revenues of $8.79 billion, 53% year over year, a great year. Operating profit was also up 25% year on year at $820 million. PlayStation Plus subscribers are down still, but I think that's because they're converting to the higher tiers, which is why the revenue is still up, right? PlayStation Network monthly active users grew significantly by 10 million users, reaching 112 million for the quarter. This figure is up from 106 million during the previous year and 102 million in the previous quarter. which was Sony's lowest monthly active user figure since it began reporting this data in early 2020. And you can go check out the video where I talked about the one metric where Xbox is beating PlayStation, and it's monthly active users. Software sales increased during the quarter at 86.5 million units, up from 62.5 million in the previous quarter, but down from the 92.7 million managed during last year's Q3 window. I would be very curious to see what will happen with these numbers once the Activision deal goes through. And I feel like this deal's happening. We'll see what happens in time. But if I had to guess, I would guess that it goes through. With concessions, they're going to have to make changes or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, Microsoft is able to buy Activision. And there's a lot of people very upset about the fact that I don't care if Microsoft buys Activision, just like I didn't particularly care that Sony bought Bungie. But it is an interesting story about the industry, right? Now, when Frank comes along and he says something like, oh, look, Sony's doing super well, I guess they need some more competition, I get the point that he's trying to make. Yes, Sony needs competition in the market. So one of the things it will do is it will force them to focus on some of the areas where they can improve, like network and services, right? But I think what he's trying to say is Sony is in no danger of foreclosure, basically, by Microsoft. They are crushing everybody in the industry currently and sitting on top. So yeah, I do agree with that ideal. But when you're saying, look how bad we did and look how good Sony did, it's like, I don't know if that's the best argument that you should be making. And some people have said that I'm not making a great enough argument to get you to subscribe. So here's the deal. Half of you aren't subscribed. We're about to hit 98,000 subscribers. We are so close to 100,000. The half of you who aren't subscribed, if you subscribed right now, I would hit the goal today, and I could stop doing these longer promos in the middle of the video. So thank you for watching, everybody. Please consider subscribing. Now, moving on, I wanted to dive into these a little bit more. Let's just see what I got open here. Derek Strickland. Derek doesn't follow me, but major props to Derek for his graphs. My goodness. Look at this guy's graphs. He takes the time to take the data and represent the graphs. And I just want to say how much. Oh, it's his name's. Wait. Is it Deke Tweak or is it Derek Strickland? Anyway, so Q3 financial year 2022 was the best quarter in PlayStation history. Sony had set a record with Q3 2020's holiday revenues. Now PlayStation has beaten that record by some 288 million. Here's a look at PlayStation's quarterly earnings from 2016 to present. As you can see, boom, look at that figure way up there. That is quite the impressive statistic. Here, I can open the chart for you so you can see it a little larger. Chart by Derek Strickland, who makes very pretty charts. Sony's PlayStation division belongs to its games and network services segment. Sony made $88.79 billion. We covered off that already, but look at those figures, man. The strategy is clearly working for them. Total games and network services earnings were also up 23% year over year, representing an increase of over $1.6 billion. Here's a look at total games and network services. As we're going through this and we see these charts that are just record-breaking statistic after record-breaking statistic, can you honestly sit in the comments and say there is a danger to Call of Duty going exclusive to Xbox, which Xbox has already said would not happen, and there's some sort of danger to Sony if Microsoft owns Activision? I don't think you can still make that case. That's the actual argument Frank is trying to make. But I just think the way he made it left him vulnerable to some criticism in terms of what they've managed to do with their revenue. But Sony has figured out a formula. Their fans didn't care about the $10 price increase because they know that the games they're going to get are of quality, right? They didn't care that the console was what it was. They don't care about they care about the console price increase, but they're still buying it. That's why I always say vote with your wallet. If you don't like things in the industry or you don't want things to continue, don't buy them. That's the only way you will affect a change in the way that you want. Like if people don't buy Horizon, you're not going to get another Horizon, for example. Continuing on, what else do we have here? So yeah, PlayStation's just having a killer year. I got a few quotes here also about how their market is even expanding in Xbox's backyard. So in the US, PlayStation is kicking butt. Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki has alluded to during the manufacturer's latest financial report. PS5 share compared to peers in Europe as opposed to the United States, our position is higher, he said, revealing perhaps unsurprisingly that Sony is dominating in Europe. In the United States also, in the summer, there was some narrowing of the gap, but more recently, our share has expanded significantly. This, of course, correlates with much greater availability of PS5 hardware. This is something truly dynamic, he said, so we have to watch the situation carefully from the fourth quarters onward. If there was 1 year Xbox needed games, you know what year it was? 2022. They needed something that year, and that year was just barren. They pushed all their games out, and Sony still managed to get God of War in 2022. They still managed to have Gran Turismo 7. They had little hits like Stray, and you know what? Maybe Hi-Fi Rush is going to be the Stray for Xbox this year, like a smaller game that a lot of people adore and are singing the praises of, but time's going to tell on that one. And can they keep the momentum going throughout the rest of the year? It's January. We know some of the releases like Minecraft Legends and the other games that are going to hit throughout the year. Xbox needs to release games, and they can't stop now, because if they do, they're going to get rolled over. Even if the acquisition deal goes through for Activision, they have an uphill battle at this point. Crazy tinfoil hat theory here, but is it purposeful? Are they purposefully pointing out just how poorly that they're doing so that the deal will go through? I don't know about that, but yeah, 2022 was not a great year for Xbox or Xbox fans. Sure, we got the third-party games on Game Pass, but 2023 has to be the year. One last thing. In so-called gamers lawsuit over Activision Blizzard purchase, judge grants Microsoft's request to stay the depositions until after April 12th preliminary injunction hearing, merger not to close before May 1st. So now we are saying that the merger date is May 1st. Previously, it was April 15th. Any day now, we are going to hear from the CMA, which will have their up to 400-page document released according to IDIS over on Reset Era, and we'll be reading that and figuring out what their issues were and what concessions Microsoft wants to make. We'll see if the CMA ends up agreeing to those concessions and the EU, and if it passes there, then the FTC has little to nothing to stand on, because if they offer those same concessions in the United States, then the FTC and Microsoft are at a bit of an impasse. Like, if you're going to nail Microsoft for something, this does not seem like the case that you get your big W with, because your argument was weak, and I feel like the FTC knows it. Anyway, we're going to find out more. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched this far, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell to know when my content goes live. Thank you for watching to this point. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the members. All the members are right here. And don't forget, if you hit that join button, you don't have to see any of the ads. I'm going to get out of here. But before I go, check out this video yesterday where I discuss, what did I talk about yesterday? My brain is like mush. Oh yeah, the statement of objections, which we know Microsoft has, and catching you up on all the different cases and how they end up intermingling. I'm going to get out of here. That video's right here-ish. And I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.